My name is Candace Chenault, and I was 31 years old when I learned that loving someone deeply doesn't protect you from being quietly replaced. On paper, my life looked fine. Not exciting, not tragic, just fine. I worked as a project coordinator at a mid-sized construction firm in Denver. Not a job that made people's eyes light up when I mentioned it, but it paid well. It was stable, and I was very good at it. I managed schedules, budgets, subcontractors, logistics, keeping dozens of moving parts aligned so a building didn't fall behind or bleed money. I made just under $90,000 a year, bonuses included. I tracked every dollar, not because I was cheap, but because I'd learned early what happens when you don't. When I was 14, my dad lost our house. He was a contractor, like many men of his generation, talented, hardworking, and allergic to paperwork. He trusted handshakes. He didn't keep receipts. He believed people would do the right thing because that's what he would do. 2 bankruptcies before I turned 16 cured me of that optimism forever. I watched him start over from nothing at 52, hauling materials for other people's projects because no one would hire a man with his financial history. That carved something permanent into my brain. I planned, I documented, I prepared for worst-case scenarios. Call it boring if you want. I called it survival. By my late 20s, I had 6 months of emergency savings, no student debt, and a small one-bedroom condo in Capitol Hill I'd bought 4 years earlier. It needed work, but it had good bones. I renovated it myself on weekends, learning plumbing and electrical work from YouTube videos, fixing mistakes slowly instead of pretending they didn't exist. It was worth over $100,000, more than what I paid. I wasn't rich, but I was safe. And then there was Evan. We met 2.5 years earlier at a friend's barbecue in Washington Park. He was laughing at something someone said, head tilted back, sunlight catching his hair, and I remember thinking, he looks easy to be around. And he was. Evan worked in marketing at a tech startup downtown. One of those companies with exposed brick, kombucha on tap, beanbag chairs no one actually used, and a ping pong table that existed mostly for Instagram photos. He made around $58,000 a year, which wasn't great for Denver, but he spent money like it barely registered. Designer sneakers on sale, bottomless brunches that somehow cost $60, drinks after work that turned into Uber rides home because life's short. At first, I liked that about him. He made life feel lighter. When he moved into my place about a year into our relationship, we split rent and utilities 50-50. Everything else quietly leaned in his direction. I paid for most dinners out, weekend trips, concert tickets, the new couch he insisted we needed because mine felt too bachelor. I didn't resent it. I made more than he did, and honestly, I thought this was temporary. We were building towards something bigger, marriage, a house, a shared future where these things evened out. For the first year and a half, it felt real. Sunday mornings at the farmer's market. Wednesday, trivia nights at the bar down the street. Saturday morning runs through Wash Park, followed by breakfast burritos we ate on the curb. He sent me memes during the day. Random thinking of you texts. Sometimes he'd leave little notes on the counter if he left for work before I woke up. We talked about the future in that casual, half-serious way couples do. Maybe a dog next year, maybe a bigger place eventually, maybe becoming one of those couples who hiked 14ers every summer. I believed him. I'd even started looking at engagement rings about 6 months earlier. Nothing concrete, just browsing. I wanted to be sure. I wanted us to be solid. My mom always said, measure twice, cut once. Marriage deserved that kind of care. Looking back now, I can see the cracks starting around the 1-year mark. They were small enough to ignore, easier to explain away than confront. Evan started saying I more than we. He angled his phone away when he texted. He came home later more often, usually with vague explanations about meetings or deadlines that didn't quite add up. I noticed everything, and I ignored it anyway. Because admitting something was wrong meant admitting I'd misjudged him, miscalculated, wasted time, and I hated being wrong. Then he started talking about Lauren. Oh, there's this woman on my team, he said one night over dinner, casual, almost bored. Her name's Lauren. She actually gets me. I didn't think much of it. People worked with people. Men and women could be friends. I believe that. Then it became, Lauren brought me coffee this morning. She remembered I like oat milk. She understands how intense this industry gets. Something in my chest tightened, but I pushed it down. I didn't want to be the jealous girlfriend. I didn't want to project insecurity. I told myself this was normal, healthy, grown-up behavior. And while Evan was building that connection, one lunch, one text, one shared complaint at a time, I was building something else entirely. Evan was turning 30 in May. For months, he'd been dropping hints, not subtle ones, Instagram stories of other people's elaborate birthday weekends. Captions like "This is how you do 30 and milestone birthdays deserve milestone effort." So I did what I always did. I planned. In early February, I opened a Google Doc titled Operation 30. Evan thought the name was cute. He joked about it being a spy mission. He had no idea how serious I was. He had no idea how much of myself I was about to pour into making his dream weekend real. At the time, I thought that was love. I didn't know yet that while I was lining up reservations and deposits and backup plans, Evan was slowly stepping out of the life we were supposed to be building together. I just didn't know it yet. If loving someone were measured in effort, Operation 30 would have been irrefutable proof. I started planning in early February, almost 3 full months before Evan's birthday. I didn't do it all at once. I opened a Google Doc one quiet Sunday morning, titled it Operation 30, and told myself I'd just jot down a few ideas. That was a lie. By the end of the week, the document had tabs. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, budget, contacts, backup plans. I approached it the same way I approached work, because that was how my brain functioned. Break a big thing into manageable pieces. Anticipate problems before they happen. Know exactly what everything costs and what happens if you pull the plug. Evan joked about it when he saw the file open on my laptop. "You're ridiculous," he said, smiling, leaning over to kiss the top of my head, but in a good way. I smiled back, proud. He had no idea how much comfort I found in control, how planning was my love language. Friday night was the centerpiece. I landed a reservation at Elysian, the newest impossible-to-book restaurant in Lohi. The kind of place people talked about like it was a rite of passage. The chef had worked under a Michelin-starred kitchen in New York before moving west, and the wait list was 6 to 8 weeks long. I started calling in January, left voicemails, sent emails, eventually leveraged a professional contact whose firm had designed their kitchen equipment. That reservation alone required a $500 non-refundable deposit. Cancel more than 72 hours out, you lost the deposit. Cancel inside that window, you paid 50% of the estimated bill. I'd studied the menu, estimated the dinner would run around $1,200 for 6 people. I noted it all in the spreadsheet. Saturday was indulgence. I booked a full spa day at Serenity Wellness in Cherry Creek, a place Evan had mentioned in passing more times than I could count. Couples massage, private steam room, facials, champagne, the works. I booked the premium package for Evan and his best friend Mark. 6 hours of uninterrupted luxury. Total cost $950. Deposit $300. Non-refundable within 2 weeks. Saturday night was the surprise. I reserved the executive suite at the Oxford Hotel downtown. Not just any room, the one with the clawfoot tub, the separate sitting room, the original 19th century architecture. I coordinated rose petals on the bed. Champagne chilling on ice. The kind of setup you see in influencer reels and assume isn't real life. The suite cost $650, prepaid and non-refundable. The setup added another $120. Sunday brunch wrapped it all up. Private room at Mercantile, 8 people, bottomless mimosas, minimum spend requirement, another $200 deposit. I ran the numbers late one night, sitting on the couch while Evan scrolled through his phone beside me. $500 restaurant deposit, $950 spa, $770 hotel and setup, $200 brunch deposit, $2,120 committed. And that wasn't counting the meals themselves, tips, transportation, or the gift. The gift. 2 weeks before his birthday, I bought it. A vintage Cartier watch he'd circled in a catalog back in December and conveniently left open on the coffee table. Subtle. I'd gone back and forth on it for days. The price tag made me flinch. Bye, Fetty. But 30 felt important, and this was the man I thought I was going to marry. I returned home with the watch, hidden in the trunk of my car, heart pounding like I'd committed a crime. I told myself it was worth it. By the time I finished planning, the total sat just over $4,200. I could afford it. It wouldn't derail my finances. And more importantly, it felt like an investment in us. What I didn't realize was how one-sided that investment had become. Around the same time I finalized the hotel reservation, Evan started coming home later. Not dramatically later. 30 minutes, an hour, just enough to be annoying but not suspicious. Team dinner ran long. Lauren needed help with a deck. We had a last-minute client call. Lauren's name started appearing more often in casual conversation. Lauren and I grabbed lunch. Lauren gets how toxic that client is. Lauren said the same thing you did. I tried to ignore the tightening in my chest. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was projecting my own fears onto something harmless. I didn't want to be the woman who monitored her boyfriend's friendships. I prided myself on being secure, independent, emotionally intelligent. So I swallowed it. Late-night texts started in March. I'd be half asleep when Evan's phone lit up on the nightstand. Not his usual notification sound. He'd changed it to something softer, more discreet. "Work stuff?" I asked once, blinking in the dark. "Yeah," he said quickly. "Lauren's just stressed. She's venting." At 11 p.m., "Can't it wait until morning?" I asked, trying to sound light. He sighed like I'd disappointed him. "She's not like you, Candace. She feels things deeply. I'm just being supportive." That phrase, being supportive, started doing a lot of heavy lifting. I let it go. Lunches became more frequent. 3, sometimes 4 times a week. Just the two of them. "Doesn't Lauren have other friends at work?" I asked one morning, trying to keep my tone neutral. Evan's expression hardened instantly. "Why are you being weird about this?" I wasn't, but suddenly I was the problem. "You're reading into it," he said. "You're projecting your insecurities." There it was, insecurity. Anytime I expressed discomfort, it became evidence of something wrong with me. He started using language he'd clearly picked up online, therapy-adjacent words, just sharp enough to cut. Unhealed, controlling, emotionally rigid. I backed off, again. I told myself I'd address it after his birthday, after Operation 30 was over, after things calmed down. 5 days before his birthday, I brought the watch inside. Evan was on the balcony, phone pressed to his ear, voice low, intimate. When I slid the door open, he jumped. He ended the call immediately. "Who was that?" I asked. "Lauren," he said, not meeting my eyes. "She's having a rough day." I nodded, stomach sinking. I hung the garment bag with his suit in the closet, right next to the gift box he'd never see. I told myself to just get through the week. I didn't know yet that the week was about to end everything. The night everything finally collapsed started with risotto. I'd left work early, something I rarely did, and stopped by the specialty grocery store on my way home. I bought the good arborio rice, real Parmesan, fresh garlic, and the exact bottle of white wine Evan liked, the one he said tasted clean. Risotto is not a forgiving dish. You can't rush it. You have to stand there, ladle by ladle, stirring constantly, letting each addition absorb before adding more. It demands attention. Presence. I thought maybe that was the point. Evan sat at the kitchen island while I cooked, legs crossed, wine glass in hand. His phone rested on the counter in front of him, screen lighting up every few seconds. He smiled at it in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. Not at me. He laughed softly, thumbs moving fast. "How was work?" I asked, keeping my voice casual, like my chest wasn't tightening with every notification. "Busy," he said, eyes still on the screen. "Lauren had a panic attack this afternoon." "Oh," I said, "is she okay?" He finally looked up at me then, and there was something in his expression, defiant, almost daring, like he was bracing for a reaction. "She is now. I stayed with her." I stirred slowly, evenly. "Stayed with her how?" "We went to the quiet room in the back," he said, "the one they use for nursing moms." I turned off the lights and we laid on the couch. We cuddled for about an hour until her breathing regulated. The wooden spoon froze in my hand. The kitchen went quiet except for the faint simmer coming from the pan, too quiet. I hadn't realized how much sound there usually was until it stopped. "I'm sorry," I said carefully. "Did you just say you cuddled another woman in a dark room at work for an hour?" Evan rolled his eyes. "Oh my God, Candace, yes, we cuddled. It's called co-regulation. It's a somatic technique. Touch lowers cortisol. It's not sexual." I turned off the burner before the rice burned. I faced him fully, spoon still in my hand, feeling absurdly like I needed something solid to hold on to. "You're telling me," I said slowly, "that you spent an hour lying in the dark, holding another woman, at your workplace, and you genuinely don't see a problem with that?" "No," he snapped, "because I'm emotionally intelligent enough to understand that touch isn't inherently sexual. Lauren was in distress. I helped her feel safe." Safe. That word landed like a slap. "If I told you," I said quietly, "that I spent my afternoon spooning with a male coworker because he was anxious about a deadline, would you be okay with that?" "That's completely different," he said immediately. "Why?" "Because men always make it sexual," he said, like it was a fact. With you, it would be inappropriate, predatory. With me and Lauren, it's different. We have a deep emotional connection. I stared at him. A deep emotional connection, I repeated. Yes, he said, leaning forward. We communicate on a soul level. It's intellectual, emotional. I feel safer with her emotionally than I do with you sometimes. The room felt smaller. I don't judge her, he continued. I don't interrogate her needs. She accepts me exactly as I am. There it was. The thing I'd been pretending not to see. He stood up and moved closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, see the faint flush in his cheeks. He looked at me with something like pity. My work wife and I cuddle sometimes, he said slowly, deliberately. It's platonic. It's healing. If you can't handle that, if you're too insecure to understand healthy emotional intimacy, that's your issue. Maybe something you should work on. I'm not going to shrink myself for your comfort. I looked at him, really looked. At the man I'd spent nearly 3 years with, the man whose birthday I'd been planning for months, the man I'd been quietly preparing to build a life with. And something inside me clicked. Not rage, not heartbreak. Clarity. You're right, I said calmly. He blinked. What? You're right, I repeated. If I don't understand, that's my issue, so I'm going to fix it. His shoulders relaxed. He smiled, thinking he'd won. Good, he said. I'm glad you're finally... I'm ending this, I said. The smile vanished. What? We're done, I said evenly. You can stay here tonight if you need to, but I want you out by the weekend. I'll help you move your things if you want. But we're over. His face cycled through confusion, disbelief, anger, then panic. You're serious? He demanded. Over this? Over me being a good friend? Over you cuddling another woman in the dark and telling me I'm broken for caring, I said. Yes. This is insane, he said. You're overreacting. I'm reacting appropriately, I said. I grabbed my keys and phone. I'm staying at a friend's place tonight, I said. I'll text you tomorrow about moving logistics. Candace, wait. We already talked, I said, opening the door. You were very clear. I didn't cry on the drive. That came later. At my friend Lena's apartment, she took one look at my face and didn't ask questions. She handed me a glass of water, pointed to the couch, and let me exist. But I couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m, I opened my email. And I opened Operation 30. Around 2:07 a.m., while Lena slept in her bedroom and the city outside her windows hummed softly, I opened my laptop and stared at the Google Doc that had consumed 3 months of my life. Operation 30. The title looked different now, smaller, almost ridiculous. I didn't feel dramatic. I didn't feel vengeful. What surprised me most was how calm I felt, as if some internal committee had finally reached a unanimous decision. I opened my email. The first message went to Elysian. Hello, I need to cancel my reservation for 6 people on Friday, May 19th, under the name Candace Chenault. I understand the $500 deposit is non-refundable and accept the loss. Reason for cancellation, no longer needed. Thank you. I reread it before hitting send. No longer needed. It wasn't passive-aggressive, it was accurate. Next email, the spa. Please cancel the Serenity Indulgence package scheduled for Saturday, May 20th, for Evan Marshall and Mark Lewis. I understand the $300 deposit is non-refundable. Reason: services no longer needed. Then the hotel. I'm canceling the executive suite reservation for May 20th, 21st. I understand the full prepayment is non-refundable. Please proceed with cancellation. Reason: change of plans. Then brunch. Please cancel the Sunday brunch reservation for 8 on May 21st. I understand the $200 deposit will be forfeited. Reason: plans changed. I sat back after the last email sent. $2,150 gone. I expected to feel sick. Instead, I felt lighter. The next morning, I returned the watch. The jeweler barely glanced at me as she processed the return. 30-day policy, 15% restocking fee, $270 gone. Worth every cent. By Wednesday afternoon, Evan started texting. First angry, then confused, then pleading. We need to talk like adults. You're being irrational. You can't just throw away 3 years over nothing. I didn't respond. By mid-afternoon, the tone shifted. So what time should everyone meet at your place Friday before Elysian? I stared at the screen. He genuinely believed the birthday weekend was still happening, that I'd ended our relationship, but would still bankroll his celebration. I typed 4 words. There is no Friday. The phone rang instantly. I declined it. It rang again. Declined. Then the text exploded. What do you mean there is no Friday? Candace, this isn't funny. You can't cancel my birthday. People are flying in. This is emotional abuse. That one almost made me laugh. I replied once more. Everything is canceled. The deposits are non-refundable. I'm out $2,150. Consider it a parting gift. Please don't contact me again. Then I blocked him. Friday night, I was back at Lena's apartment. Takeout containers on the coffee table. A movie playing we weren't really watching. My phone stayed face down. I didn't know what was happening across town, but I found out later. Evan had told everyone all week that despite a rough patch, everything was still on. He got dressed up, took pre-dinner photos, posted them with a caption about 30 and thriving. He showed up at Elysian with his friends. And Lauren. The hostess asked for the reservation name. Marshall, party of 6. She checked the system, checked again. I'm sorry, she said. That reservation was canceled Wednesday morning. Evan went pale. There must be a mistake. There isn't, she replied gently. The cancellation email is right here. Reason listed as no longer needed. According to one of his friends, Evan just stood there, frozen. Someone suggested calling me. He couldn't. That's when it hit everyone. The spa, the hotel, the brunch. All gone. They ended up at a chain restaurant on 16th Street. Evan barely ate. Lauren tried to console him, her hand on his arm, whispering reassurance while his friends watched in uncomfortable silence. I didn't hear any of this until Sunday. And by then, it was already too late. Because while Evan was crying into his birthday cocktail, I had sent one final email. And it wasn't to him. I sent the email at 9:14 p.m. on Friday night. I remember the time because I stared at the screen for a long moment before hitting send. Not out of hesitation, but out of precision. I wanted it to be late enough that it couldn't be immediately buried in the workday, but early enough that it would be seen before the weekend ended. The email wasn't long. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't cruel. It was factual. Subject, Tuesday afternoon. Hi, Melissa. You don't know me. My name is Candace Chenault. I'm Evan Marshall's former girlfriend. On Tuesday of this past week, Evan told me that he spent approximately 1 hour cuddling Lauren Brooks in a dark room at their office as part of what he described as co-regulation and emotional support. He insisted this was platonic, normal, and appropriate. I disagreed, which is why we are no longer together. I thought you deserved to know how your husband spends his afternoons at work, in case you and Evan don't share the same definition of platonic. Best, Candace. I found Melissa Brooks easily. Public Facebook profile, wedding photos from 2 years earlier, anniversary posts, vacation pictures. She looked kind, ordinary, unaware. I closed my laptop and didn't think about it again that night. The fallout didn't reach me until Monday afternoon. It came through Lena's brother, who worked in the same office complex as Evan's company. Office gossip moves faster than official emails, and by noon, the story had already mutated into something almost unrecognizable. But the core facts stayed the same. Melissa confronted Evan Sunday night. Not Lauren, Evan. And Evan folded. He didn't talk about soul connections. He didn't defend emotional intimacy. He didn't stand by the healing narrative. He panicked. He told Melissa that Lauren was obsessed with him, that she leaned on him emotionally, that he'd felt uncomfortable but didn't know how to shut it down without creating tension at work, that he'd been trying to manage her feelings, not encourage them. By Monday morning, Evan had gone to HR first. He filed a formal complaint. By the time Lauren walked into the office, there was no sympathetic work husband waiting for her. There was a calendar invite from Human Resources and a security escort. She was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Evan didn't look at her. That part stuck with me more than anything else. Monday afternoon, an email landed in my inbox from Evan's work address. Subject, you ruined my life. Candace, are you happy now? HR escorted me out like I'm some kind of criminal. Lauren isn't speaking to me. Her wife called me disgusting things I won't repeat. You didn't just break up with me. You destroyed my reputation, my career, my friendships, everything. All because you couldn't handle me being close to someone else. I thought you loved me. I read it twice. Then I moved it to trash. I wasn't vindictive. I was accurate. Over the next few weeks, the updates came in quietly. Lauren was fired. Mutual separation, officially. No one bought it. Friends drifted away. It's hard to defend someone who gets exposed, abandoned, and professionally burned in the same week. Evan moved out of his new apartment and took a room with a roommate in Aurora. His Instagram went silent. The 30 and thriving post disappeared. Melissa stayed with him for now, but made him quit his job. As for me, I slept better than I had in months. The money recovered quickly once I stopped funding someone else's fantasies. I went back to rock climbing on weekends, took on a bigger project at work. 3 months later, I got promoted, with a raise Evan never believed I deserved. And when someone new eventually asked me why my last relationship ended, I told the truth. Not bitterly, not apologetically, just clearly. Because boundaries don't destroy lives. They reveal what was already broken. The quiet that followed wasn't dramatic. No late-night texts, no apologies disguised as nostalgia, no sudden declarations of growth. Just absence. At first, the silence felt strange, like walking into a room where a loud machine had finally been turned off and realizing how much noise you'd been tolerating without noticing. I kept expecting the echo of Evan's presence to linger longer than it did. It didn't. By the second week, my condo felt like mine again. I rearranged the living room, donated the throw pillows he insisted on, reclaimed the drawer space in the kitchen he'd filled with gadgets he never cleaned properly. I didn't do it to erase him. I did it because space matters. The final logistical thread snapped when I received confirmation that his name was officially removed from the lease addendum. No more shared utilities, no more half measures, just clean lines. At work, my focus sharpened. I took on a commercial project that had been stalled for months, a mess of miscommunication, cost overruns, and missed deadlines. It should have stressed me out. Instead, it grounded me. Problems that could actually be solved were a relief after months of emotional ambiguity. 6 weeks later, my manager called me into his office. They promoted me to senior project coordinator. The raise was substantial, enough to feel, enough to matter. I didn't tell Evan. I didn't tell anyone who still knew him either. Some things don't need witnesses. I heard about him anyway, in fragments. Secondhand updates filtered through mutual acquaintances who didn't know what to do with the story now that it had no villain and no redemption arc. Lauren never returned to that company. Evan bounced between short-term contract roles. Melissa stayed, but only after setting rules that sounded a lot like ultimatums. None of it felt like victory. It felt like gravity. 3 months after the breakup, I met Daniel at a construction site. He was an engineer consulting on a mixed-use development my firm was building. Tall, quiet, direct. No performative charm, no rehearsed vulnerability, just competence and calm. We talked about work at first, then books, then life. On our third date, sitting across from each other at a small Thai place, he asked about my last relationship. I didn't sugarcoat it. I didn't trauma dump. I told him the truth. When I finished, he nodded once and said, "That makes sense. You set a boundary. He didn't respect it." No psychoanalysis, no blame, no debate. Just clarity. That was when I realized something important. Love doesn't require translation. Respect doesn't need defending. The version of me who planned Operation 30 thought love meant anticipation, seeing needs before they were spoken, smoothing edges, absorbing discomfort quietly so someone else could shine. The version of me now knows better. Love is reciprocal. Boundaries aren't punishments. And walking away isn't cruelty. It's accuracy. I didn't ruin Evan's life. I stopped underwriting it. And what survived after the smoke cleared wasn't anger or revenge or even relief. It was peace.